What follows is not a review, or even a proper evaluation of 1980's Friday the 13th. Instead, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to peel back the layers of storytelling mechanics to explain why this film, in particular, still haunts us so many years later, when so many other horror films have come and gone and not left the same impression. What makes this different? The original Friday the 13th is without a question one of the most influential motion pictures ever made. Questions of quality aside, even mainstream critics are forced to admit the widespread effect the release of Sean S. Cunningham's popcorn thriller had on the landscape of modern motion picture. Bob Clark's proto-slasher Black Christmas and John Carpenter's seminal Halloween set the stage, but it was Friday the 13th that effectively changed the direction of horror films forever. Imitations followed in droves until no holidays were left without stock and slash features revolving around them. From New Year's Evil to Silent Night, Deadly Night, but none captured the imagination of the film-going public the way Friday did. Contrary to the protests of those same mainstream critics, there is a reason for this. Friday the 13th is crude, yes, but it's never sloppy. In fact, it's a meticulously staged feature, lean and careful, far superior in structure and approach to the work of more respected directors. While it would be a stretch to suggest the film qualifies as high art or really art of any kind, the near-constant comparisons to base-level pornography are equally unreasonable. There's a reason that Friday endures, a reason why, 11 sequels later, the brand name still generates excitement in horror fans. The reason is this. Friday the 13th is the great white shark of summer movies. It may not do much, but what it does extraordinarily well. Unlike the literal approach to the slasher material employed by Halloween and many of the later clones, Friday embraces the queasy logic of a nightmare, not so much abandoning reason as much as rejecting it in favor of a more heightened experience. The opening sequence, set in the distant, but not too distant, past, plays out exactly like a campfire ghost story. Two camp counselors separate from the group to make out, only to be discovered in the act and murdered. The comparisons to dozens of familiar urban legends are obvious: youth, sex, death. It's within this world, the same one populated by the man with the hook, that Friday sets itself. Not more than a few moments later, we learn even more local backstory. A boy drowning, poisoned drinking water, murders. Camp Crystal Lake's got a death curse. It's jinxed. The locals call it Camp Blood. The film isn't just building a myth to wrap around its threadbare plot, it's developing a narrative style. Ghost stories and nightmares. That's what's at play here. The filmmakers make no attempt to hide their goals. Annie, the victim who shares an occupation with the killer, states in passing to a complete stranger, "But when you've had a dream, as long as I have, you'll do anything." Marcy, soon to die in a shower stall, confides in her boyfriend about Jack and her reoccurring shower dream. In the end, it's revealed that the dream we're watching is the nightmare recollection of Alice, the sole survivor. Until the end, Alice has been a very reliable narrator, even filling in scenes she's not present to observe. But it's telling that she's an artist. She asks Steve Christie, "Do I really look like that?" And he answers, "You did last night." Friday the 13th's dream logic extends to the plot itself. Images reoccur with startling regularity. Nettie's food drowning foretells Mrs. Voorhees' vision of Jason on the lake. Bill's slaughter of the snake in the cabin mirrors Alice's decapitation of Mrs. Voorhees. Surprised by Ned's trick shot at the archery range, ultimately the place where she'll die under very similar circumstances later that night, Brenda warns the prankster she'll tack him up to dry, a fate Ned escapes, but befalls Bill. The viewer is assaulted with violent ideas and images until the foreboding spills over into materialization. The last vestiges of reality ebbs away as night approaches. It's no accident that we awake on the couch with Alice, now alone in the camp. What follows is a painfully protracted scene of our heroine preparing a tea kettle. Nothing stylized, nothing unreal. At this point, the audience is waiting for something outrageous, but instead, we watch the most mundane activity possible. The nightmare can't be over, and yet the film has changed. The sudden crash of Brenda's barely alive body through the cabin window is a double shock. The violent images mixed with the realization that the terrible dream is not over. It's not over then, and not over after Mrs. Voorhees has been dispatched. Cunningham and crew employ the kettle trick once more, this time with Alice in her canoe. Disarming normality returns for one brief moment before Alice's final line. Then he's still there. Disturbs not because a monster might still be loose. After all, the film has done nothing to develop the idea that Jason might still be alive, really, but because the line between reality and nightmare has been permanently torn down. We don't trust that it's over. We watch a ripple fade on Crystal Lake, and we expect to see something there, just underneath the surface. Under the surface of a dream. Thankfully for us, the nightmare didn't end there.